All right. Looks like we're about ready to start. Guys. What's up? How's it going, guys? How you guys doing? So, today, we're going to talk about a composer called Yuka Kitamura, alright? Right now, we're listening to one of her songs from Armored Core Verdict Day. Alright, so, for those of you who don't know, Yuka Kitamura is a composer who has worked on Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, and Sekiro, and has made some really, really cool scores. There are some other composers that I want to cover eventually, who also did really awesome music in the Dark Souls series, but I want to start off with Yuka. So, without further ado, let's hop into it. So, starting off, we are listening to Verdict Day. This is it's technically Armored Core 5, but they've had a lot of other Armored Cores before this, but I think that this is the first one that Yuka worked in. And what I want to highlight today is, as we're listening to this, there's going to be a very solid grounding in very ominous and impressioning violins and strings, while having some kind of world instrument component to it. That seems to be something that she tends to really work with. So you have a very big, boisterous, cinematic background and pad. Very high reverb. So whenever you hear the drums, there's going to be like it sounds like it's in a big space. Those big string pads, and then having some kind of, again, like a world instrument playing through. So we are going to go ahead and listen to this again from the beginning, and we're going to see if we can pick out some stuff that is cool about it. So let's check it out. And let me know how the levels are. It should be okay. Let me make sure. I'm just crank it up a little bit. Maybe, yeah, as long as it's not like too intensely high, it should be okay. We'll do it like there. If it needs to be changed, just let me know. Okay, now that's something they do a lot in like the Call of Duty soundtracks, or in any war, like film, in any war cinema. There's this little effect that's like almost like a it's like a signal going out. It has a very mechanical kind of sound, but here, let's see if we can listen for it. It's like that. You hear that? All right, so that honestly is like, that's pretty standard cinema. It sounds like she was just filling the job here, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I don't think it's breaking any new ground. What I do find fascinating, though, is you can hear there's this kind of consonant or dissonant kind of chromatic movement that she'll do with strings. And I don't know what it's called, but whenever you're on a violin and you like will go back and forth, or do like really pulled legato, so it's like from staccato to legato. But what she'll do in this, and I notice she does a lot in Sekiro, is it uses the kind of bending of pitch of the violins to give something the sense of like something wailing or crying, and it gives it like a creepy vibe, which is cool. In this, so I guess some of the words I just threw out just to like clarify. Chromatic. I've got my piano. There we go. So chromatic is, instead of, if you play like a C major scale, right? Here, I can scooch this to the side for a second. Okay. So if you're playing a C major scale, you're just playing the white keys, right? Right? So what I'm missing are these little black keys in between, right? So when you go from here, your C, from here to here, that right there is called a whole step. But if you go from here to the note right next to it, that's called a half step. So what chromatic means is, instead of going up the white keys to get to our tonic, the other C, you're going to go up by half note increments. So you're like, right? So you're going. Rhythm doesn't matter. It's just you're hitting all those notes in between, right? So she will use chromaticism, which is anytime you're using those like half note steps, and what's also called microtones. So if you notice, whenever I was playing the piano, when you go from one note to another, you jump up a pitch, right? Whether it be that little half step we talked about or a whole step, right? Well, let me make sure my chat's actually up. So imagine that instead of making that little jump, instead you bend a little bit. So now I'm going to play something for you and see if you can tell the difference between this. Now listen to this. You see how it just goes up like a tiny bit? Well, she will use that to make it to where it doesn't sound like a note has landed on the right pitch. And so it actually almost sounds, it's adding this kind of tension because it's still an instrument. You hear it as an instrument, but it's making something that's like not committing to a tone. And so it actually makes it kind of mimic the feeling of something more natural or human. And whenever it's done in a wailing and unsettling way where it's like conflicting with certain notes, where like if you have a C major scale, you have those are like very strong notes in there. So you have the C, you have E, and then you have G, right? Or yeah, G. And those are like, that sounds just super happy and chill, right? Well, if you mess with the notes right before it, it sounds a lot darker, right? So if you do those bends in between there, it's going to add extra tension because it's like, okay, is it this or this? What your brain's kind of hearing is like the clash between this, right? See how that kind of like is grating on the ears? Well, sonically, it's really a helpful tool to create tension and also like kind of despair. So that's one thing I want to point out because she ends up using that technique a lot later on. Yep. Yeah. All right. So I want you to kind of like picture this sonic space, right? So I'm gonna lay a scene for you, right? And I want to see if the scene fits what you're hearing. So when I hear this song, it's in 4/4, which means it's like you can split the beat into 4 parts per measure. So what that means is like 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And that can be split into like 2 groups of 2, right? 2 times 2 is 2, or is 4. Jesus Christ! So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Very basic stuff. That's like really just about as basic as it can get. But even though it's in 4/4, you can like kind of move to this and it works whenever you hear the rhythm, like your head is bobbing at the right times. Let's listen to what's actually happening with the drums. You hear that? So it's not hitting on the main beat. And so it's giving this sense of like, there's a sense of the drums coming from nowhere, right? They don't really have a center. And so though technically they do stick to that 4/4 time frame, they are kind of coming at unexpected times because it's not on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that combined with the fact that it's like a war drum gives you the sense that, okay, big patty reverb because it's like, it sounds like it's in a big space. You have drums of war coming out of nowhere, but it's still a little silent, right? I want you to picture you get to a battlefield, you're trying to figure out the situation, you don't see anything, right? You're trying to get information, and you're like, okay, what's going on? I don't see anything yet, but we're on edge. We just heard some of those tense moments, and we have the drums playing, right? But now, out of that tense ambiguity comes this. Oh shit. I see it. So, in this moment, what you see, picture this big scene. It could be like a destroyed city, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. They can't see where the target is. They know that they're there, but now they're like, oh crap, like we're getting a reading from like over here, like there are units coming in, and it's like bigger than we expected, right? So you have all right, so what we have here is, this is the main key. This is like the key of the song, so it's in the key of D, right? Whenever you hear this, it sounds like it fits with everything that's played. So let's check it out. Right? But what's happening is here, what we have is we are pulsing between our fifth. So remember, we had in that C major scale, the fifth interval of that scale that we played, right? In here, what we're doing is we're playing the fifth and the fourth, and then we're going to an augmented fifth. So when I play a C major scale, tell me what note sounds odd to you. Right? That right there sounds off, because when we're listening to like one scale and we hear a note that's out of that, it's going to put us on edge. And it's also really tense because this perfect fifth, it's kind of, I can disambiguate this a bit. So when you play a fifth wants to resolve to the bass. So let's say we start with C, and then we go. It makes you want to go. Makes you want to go right back to C, right? There is a sense of like, the reasoning for that, I have no clue. There's been a lot of research on whether that's cultural or whether it's genetic or both. I think it's probably both, but the effect doesn't need to really be like understood completely to deny, or like to understand that it's there, rather. So in this case, anytime we're close to that fifth, because it's so tonically tied to your main note, right? If you go right above it, it really makes you want to go down, right? So you have being that close to that adds tension. Remember earlier how we were talking about the violin kind of creeping in between certain notes, right? Well, it's doing the same thing here. So what we get is boom, boom, right? Oh yeah, boom, 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 boom. So what's doing here is we get that same rhythmic intensity kind of going against our expectations, but it's also going quick and it's adding tension. So it gives us the sense of like something coming in fast and something that is like dangerous. So really, really love that. Like we've not listened to a lot of music here, and it's already said a lot, which is cool. Now, when you hear those violins in the background now, I want you to think of that as like the emotional state of the people whose side you're on, right? So a lot of times violins, because they're close to the kind of sound of a human voice, subconsciously we register them as being like very human. And so in this particular example, if you listen to the violin part, it can kind of give you a sense of what the like writer of this, like let's say that the person in the situation who's kind of like the character you're following, so to speak, you can get a sense of their emotion by listening to the violins. So you'll hear at moments they'll have ambiguous notes. So like if we have the right, instead if we went, you have these two whole steps around your main note, C. Those aren't happy, they aren't sad, but they are like ambiguous and usually give things a kind of adventurous or heroic, sometimes like a stoic kind of vibe. And so we'll hear that kind of flavor sprinkled in there. And then other times, that tension I was talking about and that sadness that you can kind of get from playing with the minor key, they're going to sprinkle that in there. And the kind of effect that it gets is like, okay, there's moments where they're like building confidence, and then there's moments where like, oh God, like this situation's worse than we thought. So they're kind of building tension between these two things going on with whoever the protagonist is. And you don't even have to play I've not played this game, and you can already tell that that's kind of what's going on, right? You are you're getting this mixture between confidence and like kind of human reality of this like situation where like maybe we're screwed, right? I would also say another thing is that when you have those ambiguous notes, the reason why that's important, so whenever I was talking about instead of, when you hear that, that's just like, that's a goody goody, right? If you have this, wait, that's a bad guy, right? But when you have this, you have something that's not a good guy or a bad guy, right? I know that's like a very basic way of putting this, but effectively what that does is it makes it into someone, you can kind of think of those intervals as reflecting someone who is not a goody-goody, it's not a goody-goody moment, or is not like completely sinister. One of the reasons I mentioned that is that if you look at the name of this track, it's called Trickster. So when you mess with those whole tone intervals, you can go on and on about like what the naming of things is and like what the significance of that is. You can dig into that all day. But the effect is that it makes it sound like less centered. So the point I'm trying to make is that if you want to make something sound mischievous, which mischievous kind of by definition is like playful, which is good, and also kind of like maybe a little destructive or like self-serving, so that's like a bit of darkness, that kind of tonal quality makes something like, it can give something a feeling of mischievousness, and so that fits with the Trickster. So yeah, it's cool how they sprinkle those little ideas in here. So this is actually another point to be made. Whenever they mess around, there's a, let's talk about modes super quick. So you know how I played earlier the C major scale? Right, those are all the white keys between C. Right, I'm playing here. Let's go ahead and I'll scooch this over. Do a little scooching. Okay, so if I'm playing, I'm playing all the notes between these two C's. Right? Well, let's say I play all the white keys, but instead of starting with C, let's say I hop up to here. Right? That's a different mode, right? So all it means is that you're playing the same notes, but you're changing which one you start on, and usually the one you're stopping on. The reason that it changes is we're skipping all these black notes, right? But the way that the notes relate to each other is going to change. So like this, if I am playing a C major scale, right? I'm going from here and I'm jumping up 2, right? And then to get to here, I'm going up 2 again, right? But then from here to here, it's only 1. So all that's happening when you're playing a mode is that you're changing the intervals that happen after you play a starting note. So now I'm going to go up 2 like I did the first time, but then the next time I'm only going to go up 1. So it just changes the way that the notes interact with each other. So this is called Phrygian. So you... Alright, so the reason that someone would want to use Phrygian is to make something sound foreign. And I actually think that this is one of the... You can make a really strong case that this is primarily a cultural thing. So in a lot of Eastern music, they tend to use the minor second. So you have your tonic, which is your start note. If you go up a half step from that, that's your minor second. So in Western music, a lot of times we'll go up to this major second, or we'll either play with major or minor. But in a lot of Eastern music, they'll use the minor second. Right? So another thing that this is communicating is that there's a sense of like an outsider coming to fight you. And so what I think is fascinating is that I think there is some component of this that is like kind of biologically ingrained, but specifically with the Phrygian mode, it can kind of it can elucidate a little bit how our cultural understanding of music can actually change how we interpret certain sounds in soundtracks, right? So that's all I'm trying to say there. All right, now you just got this rip and bass. Now it's like, if that trickster beforehand was like, I don't know what's gonna happen, like we'll see what happens. Now it's like going into badass like warrior mode. So right. That's a really wubby bass too. It's like it's not tonically very easy to hear. So like it might be playing those. Right? So it could be playing down here, but because they've taken out a lot of the high end, you're just gonna hear whoa, right? So it's very I don't know, it sounds kind of sloppy, but very wubby, and I don't know. Sounds confident and cool. This is the part of you that's like, oh yeah, let's fucking get it. So now, if you're playing this game, I'm sure that you're like, at this point, you're like, all right, dude, let's get it. We got the jam zone. It's like that bass has that color of like a rock song, and so it gives you the sense of like confidence within this bigger cinematic picture, right? Very cool. All right, I actually think that's pretty much most of the ideas in that song. So let's hop over to Dark Souls 2 Rune Sentinel. So we can tell in Yuka Kitamura's in her first soundtrack, the big takeaways is that she was going for a very like, I would say like a fairly standard cinematic style, but you had little elements that were unique to her. So that idea of using Phrygian with a world instrument to make something feel like foreign and tense, that's used in a lot of like war movies, in games as well. You have the padded violin, which is also used a lot. One thing that is really fascinating is that she really, over time, starts to use more of that like tense violin, and I'm curious to see if that pops up in this song, because I honestly don't remember. So let's find out. I kind of, just as a little aside, how I went through like deciding what tracks to do, I just went and found all of her games that like she was known for, and I went and found songs of each one of those for us to kind of dig into. So that was kind of my process. So that was Armored Core Verdict Trickster. We've got Dark Souls 2, Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, and Sekiro after this. So without further ado, let's check this out. All right, once again, we start off. Yeah, let's go ahead and turn that back around. So once again, we start off with a very she'll kind of use a bit of percussion or like light instruments at the beginning with a lot of reverb. And so what it does is like picture you walk into a dark room and it's completely dark, right? You have no clue how big it is. You don't know what the space is. And then someone drops a pen, okay? You don't see anything, but then you hear, it gives you a sense of space, right? The moment you hear that reverb and the kind of like echo and sound of the room, it's going to give you a sense of like how big the space is, right? So at the beginning of these songs, what she's doing, she's like dropping sound in the bucket and letting it reverberate. So you get this sense of like a scene being there. Like you're snapped in and now you're like in a big, dark, empty space, but something's kind of churning within it. That's so perfect for Dark Souls. You know, that's the essence. I wouldn't even say that's the essence of Dark Souls because you can extrapolate a lot from it, but it feels very Dark Souls. It really does. And then you get that. You get this intense and just this like funky, I guess it's tuba. But just listen to how dirty that sounds, man. Oh my god, that's incredible. Man, okay, so this might actually be tough to go into, but I'm excited to. So there's two things that are, well, there's a lot going on here, but first of all, so that's in G. So all right, so once again, we're seeing this use of the minor second, but here, it's not using that same cadence or instrumentation that makes it seem foreign. Here, let's say you start off here, right? Right? That's your start note, right? What happens if I play these two notes together? What does that sound like? What if I add this? Right? So, from this, you're getting just tension. Tension. From this, you're getting a sense of like, what the fuck's going on? You know how I said that there's like ambiguity that comes with having like a whole step? What you're getting here is ambiguous tension. But it's matched with a tuba that is like really playing really loudly. And it's got this like, you can tell that they're playing it hard, like they're blowing in hard because it has this like crackling sound from them pushing the instrument. So what you get is like a sense of like, oh, fuck. So you drop the pen in the room. You're like, what's happening? Oh, God. That communicates a Dark Souls boss so well. Moreover, I would also say that maybe one of the reasons that we think of Dark Souls bosses as being that impressioning is because the music is like adding to that, right? So we can't even say that like that is the essence of it, or like it's communicating what the game is doing, because they really in this moment are becoming greater than the sum of their parts, right? They're functioning together so well. So that's one part. The second part is the rhythm here is so complicated. So let's see if we can just like, I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to do this, but we'll try. Oh my gosh. That's like actually really tough to count out. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Oh my god, man. Yeah, that's just like they're doing two things here. So it sounds like either it's messing between 3/4 and 4/4 time. They might have like 5/4 time in there, which is there's a song called Take Five. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. Right. So you have the sense of like there being emphasis on the one note, but in order to get to that one note, you have to go through 5 notes. 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1. That's literally all that a time signature means when it's putting pressure or like emphasis on a certain pulse, right? Because our brains are kind of designed to have the ability to sense patterns in movement. Music and dance are like very like ingrained in us. What's crazy here is that the moment you start counting like 4/4 time or 3/4 time, the pulses are so off that it's like hard to get a sense of like the whole time. And so even without knowing exactly what the time signature is, that's honestly one of the reasons I wanted to do this live, is just because like the last time we did this, I had all the answers, but here I want you to like see how cool it could be, even if you don't know what the words are, to see the effect, right? Because what's happening here is bum, 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 right? So that tuba, whenever it comes in, is coming at a consistent rate, right? But when it's played in there and when it fits with the drums, or when you have the right, that sound, they're coming at different times. So it gives the sense of like, okay, this tuba when it's playing is consistent. It's big and bold. That's the boss, right? But it's coming at different times. So the way that's mirrored in the gameplay is like, okay, well, they're swinging their sword, but it's not just like this the whole time, right? That would be easy. It's like a sense of weight and momentum, but you don't know when it's going to hit you. That is kind of like, that's kind of the basis of why, a lot of why Dark Souls like fights are really enjoyable, is because you're trying to really get in tune with the fight and become like, get to a point where like you get a sense of when things are going to like happen, even though it's off kilter. So that's, I'm getting that vibe immediately. We haven't even been like 10 seconds in this song. You can already feel that. They're also doing something where they're having the tuba hit on the on beats and the off beats at different times. So let's say you go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and that and is an upbeat. So like, let's say you're dancing to music, and sometimes you're dancing to music and you're like, this music is making you want to sink into your feet. And then there's sometimes where it's actually the lift, like in reggae. Boom, bop, 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 bop. You see how I'm like feeling that upbeat? Well, that tuba is kind of clicking in to the upbeat and downbeat. So it's like, you see what I'm saying? So it's like, it has a sense of like, oh, right? It's like off center, unbalanced, like dangerous, and like, it's not exactly what I think they're trying to communicate, but it would be the same thing as like just launching a massive boulder that's like shaking and shifting in the air, and it's like coming towards you, and you're like, what the hell is going on? It's kind of like that. So yeah. One, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, what it sounds like it's doing is it's going 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. So when I say all those words like 4/4, 3/4, 6/8, 5/4, all those numbers really help is if you're someone who's playing a piece of music and you're like looking at a piece of sheet music, right? And you're like, okay, when am I supposed to play like certain notes, right? That is the function of that kind of thing, right? Outside of that, all you really need to know to get a sense of why this is adding that like kind of catapulting vibe is first, it is changing when it's emphasizing the downbeat and the upbeat, just like reggae emphasizes upbeat, ska emphasizes the upbeat. But you see how I'm like, but I'm like, there's more energy going up, right? That's one thing. And it's taking the 4/4, like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Now picture you're taking steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and then someone drops the stair that you're standing on before you go to the next one. So you're like, oh, right? You slide. That sense of unbalance comes from them taking the last note out of a 4/4 thing and putting it back into a 4/4. So it's like you're stepping 1, 2, 3, and right before you step on 4, it goes 1. So it's like you're like, what the hell is going on, right? It makes you feel unbalanced. It can be as complicated as you want it to be whenever it's explained, but functionally it's just like, oh, when I listen to this, I feel like shit's teetering off of a mountain and like there's a big dude who's about to like slap me in the face. That's like functionally what they're doing. So it almost doesn't matter what the name of all those things is. It's more important that like it sounds that way. The moment you notice it sounds that way, it's like, oh yeah, well, we're fighting a big boss. Let's just like put that in there because it sounds, you know, tense. So there we go. Ooh. Also, you have to love the choirs in Dark Souls. You really do. Like, just gives this sense of like them being an ancient, regal, badass thing, and almost like they are deified in some way. So it's like you are coming into contact with like a semi-divine being that's like hell-bent on wrecking your shit. And that's pretty cool. Ooh. You know how I just said that like a little bit ago that violins will give you the sense of how the like protagonist is doing? Well, you have the trombone come in, and instead of doing its same old thing, it's going to go. Let's see. Here. Okay, so you have the trombone coming in at a major third, I guess. So it's kind of like changed keys, but specifically, let's just listen to the violin. The way you could translate that into human or like English would be like, guys. That's what that says to me. That says, oh, we are on shaky ground and I'm scared. I need help. That's what that violin says to me. Right? Do you hear that? And then they just change keys twice. Hey guys, hey guys, hey guys, hey guys. It's not the same key anymore, but it's adding more and more tension, like you aren't in control of the situation. So the reason they do those key changes, which all that means is like, so let's say go. Then the next time I go. I'm taking the same group of intervals, so going from your root, whole step, half step. But then I'm doing that same intervals, but I'm moving all of those up a half step on the piano, right? So they did a key change here to make it like it's the same structure, but it's getting higher. And so then it gives a sense of like, oh, like you're being lifted off your feet, like losing control of the situation. That's kind of the vibe. It's escalating. And now what's so badass is now it is a moment where both of you guys are truly like coming closer to like the same pedestal. So you have you have that like very powerful choral element that's like, I'm a powerful god. That violin again is representing the kind of like human emotion. So that's them struggling, and there's little bits of confidence and then little bits of hopelessness, which is such a cool contradiction that you get. So you don't even need to see the why. It's literally just you can feel it, right? You have powerful God, and then you have someone who's like, maybe I can do it. Come on. There's like desperation there. That is so powerful because that's really what these bosses are. It's like, I want to push past this obstacle that seems insurmountable, and it might seem futile, but like they're still insistent, right? It's really, really cool stuff. Oh, dude, and then instead of taking it somewhere new, what do? They just add in like the drums get a little louder and they start mixing up the tempo. So now it's like this is the Mortal Kombat. And instead of it going to some other frivolous idea, it's like, no, it's the same Mortal Kombat. It's just more intense. So I love that. And the chorus is just like lamenting, right? It's similar to like Shadow of the Colossus, where you have like you're fighting this supposedly insurmountable thing, and it has this otherworldly, just like enormous, inconquerable like force of nature, right? With that, it's very dramatic, right? Chorals, like choral bits also are associated with like opera, and like dramatic church music, especially in like Catholic music. And so what is like kind of cool about that is that it adds that kind of cultural element. It's tapping into that part of us that recognizes that dramatic nature, and it's using it to make this all the more dramatic, where it's like just visceral combat between this desperate human and this old falling god. Yeah, really cool. So that's a moment where like we're both on the same stage, and this is the moment where the boss like closes the book. They're like, "Look at me, bitch!" Right? That's what happens here. That's so cool. Listen. Oh, both sides, like you're getting a sense of like both of them like equal to each other, right? Let's hear what happens here. Remember the beginning, how they'll cut things out to give you a sense of like space and to add power to the things that are there. Now that old god is like speaking in a lower voice, and it's like, you fucked up now. You can't escape. It's like, that is just so cool, isn't it? Isn't that so awesome? And now the choir, like, what's interesting is because you have that whoa sounding so like clearly the boss, that choir in the background is almost like them singing about you at this point. And so because they made that very clear moment of like whoa, right? The other element that comes in, you can assume, is kind of like the other player in this, right? Or like the other actor in this part. Once again, we have the minor second. So cool. Yeah, it kind of flips the role there. So now it's like the drums are just communicating the combat. The heavier they are, the more intense like the combat is. It's less about the kind of general vibe of the scene, and it's more like you're in it, like this is happening right now, right? What's so cool about this part though is that the trombone is still like kind of playing the boss's part, but now that choir is like very much feeling like your main character going against the odds, right? Love that. Hell yes. Thank you, Yuka. She's freaking awesome. Freaking awesome. 10 out of 10, dude. 10 out of freaking 10. Okay, we got Bloodborne Lady Maria. Let's check this out. No. I need to do OST. There we go. Here we are. Remember at the very beginning how I said in Sekiro, she started using the violin in a way that was really tense? Okay, so we had in the Armor Core... Sorry, I was like trying to tune into some things here. So in the Armor Core soundtrack, we had the difference between like... Here, she's using that again. So we're getting a minor sixth or an augmented fifth. All it means is that like, oh, is it the fifth note that I play or the sixth note? If it's a fifth one, it's augmented because it's going up. If it's a sixth, then it's the lowest one, right? That's literally all those words mean. In this, you're getting a play between the perfect fifth and that minor sixth again, which gives tension just like she did in Armor Core Verdict Day, but now that's a very typical like horror kind of cadence, and so we kind of like recognize that tension that it brings. Right? So we've got that. And she's very heavily using this like kind of wailing string thing underneath that just gives the sense of like it's like a wraith, right? So whenever you hear this, it's tense and it's like creepy. You get the sound of like primordial wraith, creepy bastard thing. Nice. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, now this violin is playing for Lady Maria, right? So, right? So it's playing in 1, 2, 3. Like you have a 1, 2, 3. It's playing in a 3/4 time, which gives it the sense of like a waltz. And it's playing, I think it's a viola. So it's not as high and bright as violin. So it has an even more kind of like human tone to it. So what that does is it gives it this sense of like regality, because 3/4 time is like waltz, like right. That's like a, I don't know. It's kind of associated with kind of like aristocracy, I guess, which makes sense for Lady Maria. But they're playing it with that tense stuff in the background, and they're playing in a it's minor, but it might also have like bits of Phrygian in there where they're like messing with the minor second like I talked about before. So instead of, it might be going, they're like throwing in little bits of Phrygian in there to make it nice and spicy. Ooh, got a key change. So now they're using that chromatic idea again to make it less centered. So if I'm playing, and in the middle of that, you go like, whoa, right? Gives the impression of like a wraith, and it adds tension, right? Because it's like slidey, right? Now that high bright violin you hear in the background, that's like, to me, that is communicating like a horrifying beauty. So something majestic but twisted, right? apartment. Now, the moment you hear those trumpets, they tend to be associated with like a military vibe. And so anytime you hear it, it's like there's a combative element coming in. So this is like now this like eerily beautiful, but like creepy, twisted, regal picture that we have is now coming at you with like combative intent. It's also tragic. When you go from minor third, major second to your tonic, that's like classic minor key. You have just a very somber fall down to your main note, right? So that gives the sense of like lamenting finality. It's like doomed, and you almost feel pity for it if it weren't so creepy, right? So there's a twinge of sadness they add there, which I also like. Very dramatic. Once again, we hear the minor sixth going down to perfect fifth. Right? So just how I was talking about there being sadness, but then adding ambiguity with right, with having a whole step instead of that half step. They add that in, do like a little change, and then right when you get the sense of like, oh, creepy thing coming after me, but there's like a twinge of sadness. Now that is the same moment that we had in the last track with the Rune Sentinel of like, okay, I am fighting this like semi-divine, sad but powerful and creepy creature, right? Yeah. So what's cool is before we had, right? Which that's sad, but now it's going, instead of from here to here, it goes. Now, that is exactly what they did in the Ruin Sentinels. Remember what I said before about that? How it was tense and ambiguous, but like kind of like unsettled, and you get kind of a sense of confidence when you play with the minor second or major minor seventh, major second. That's just where whenever I'm saying that, if this is my main note, that's just saying that the seventh note in that scale would be this, right? That's all it means. It's all about like relationality. But in this, they add that in, so the moment like you feel pity for her, then it's like playing this big choral quality that makes it seem divine, and then it makes it seem confident. So now it's like, no, I will not be pitied. That's the vibe. Love it. There's the tragic again. And here's the confident and angry. Oh, you denied me, right? Now it's adding that tension just like in the Rune Sentinels. Each one of these songs has been doing this, and I love it. Where the last one was very abrupt with like the hey, ho, hey. Right? It was very in your face. This one hits the same place, but it slides into it because now it's like kind of like creepy wraith like sneaking in, but giving this sense of like, okay, I'm the old god. I'm gonna put you in your place. So you have the beginning, which drops the pen in the area, right? You get a sense of the space, builds up the tension of the thing, builds up like some of your qualities, plays with the combat of those things as it like both parties start to gain their footing, and then the moment where it, like after it escalates combat, it goes to, okay, this is my battle. This is not your battle. This is my boss fight. I'm named Lady Maria. It's not named whatever your character's name is, right? This is where they're like, listen up. So what they're doing there is they're actually juxtaposing some of those notes with a corollary major line to give it a sense of like, no, I am Regality. I am the badass monster here. Like, listen to me. That's pretty much exactly what's going on. And it's angry. Ooh, key drop down. So a key change up will give something tension. A key drop down will, it can also add tension, but it's like a sense of like, it can give a sense of like doom, I suppose, in this context. The very militant drums in the background. Or like, kind of like punching. Yeah. So we had that chromatic idea before of like dropping down. Now it's doing the same thing, but with that like very sad violin. It's really a beautiful piece. It's really lovely. So yeah. I am going to do main menu Dark Souls 3. I love this song. So let's check this out. Immediately. Ding. Right? So we established in the background that things associated with like the church are giving something like a divine, powerful vibe. And they're singing in a minor key, which makes them seem dark. It doesn't necessarily mean sad or bad. It just means dark. Minor tends to just have a darker, less bright sound. So immediately, we're hearing a bell, and we're hearing that it's like, oh, we're in the land of gods. That's the sense I get from this. Now listen, there's going to be some violins coming in. I want you to picture that being your main character, like stepping into it, right? Here. It's a tense walk. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, right? Now that solitary voice singing, it's kind of like you coming against all those bosses, right? So this gives the sense of like, you have that movement of the violins in the background, which gives you the sense of like something on a march, and they're playing that dark kind of minor. They're playing those dark minor. What do you call it? Phrases. Sorry about that. And you have this very mourning, lonely voice with a violin that's playing unison on a lot of the notes. It might be unison the whole time. but it gives this just very dramatic, sad lament that even though it's powerful and it's charging forward, there's something like tragic about it, and that's really like a very stark feeling you get from this. Right? Now let's listen to the violin here. This is some of the most melodic that the game gets, right? This violin is like it's like your character's moribund, tragic carry through a world that is like dark, right? You have the gods come in with the voices, right? And it's almost like your character is kind of a god by the end of it. And so it's almost like there's a sense of like you coming into the world of the gods unsteadily, but then as time goes on, like you're rising to this twisted godhood. And obviously a lot of that's informed. If this was made for a different game, it would like it might communicate something else. The point is that if this was playing upbeat Kirby music, it would be amusing because the funny point of that would be like, okay, well they're clearly trying to draw like an ironic parallel between how dark this game and how funny the music is. It's like a Quentin Tarantino quality, right? Where he throws in a lighthearted song with a dark scene. The whole point here is it's like a song might not need to specifically communicate something. It could be used in different contexts. However, it's how it's relating to the game in which it is that gives it that flavor, right? So you have to take both of them because it's almost like the song and the game are one, right? So this is communicating a certain emotional quality, and then we're kind of mapping that onto what happens in the game, and they're both feeding back to one another. And I think they do so very well because it gives the game a very dramatic, powerful, solemn, just a mix of emotions because you have like a proud, confident quality and also a sad, moribund quality. So it's really cool. So at the beginning of that violin goes sad, but then it goes up to a brighter note, which makes it seem like, no, you'll listen to me, right? It's still minor and it's still like sad, but the intensity that they're playing those violins gives it the sense of like a lamenting, rebelling beast. Right? This is just combat right here, right? It went from 3/4 earlier to this 1/2. 1, 2, 1, 2, boom, boom, boom. Your ascent to godhood, right? You can hear that choir or the singer above you, right? Now listen here. You hear, ah. You're going to hear those going up. You're going to hear the violins going down, which to me gives the impression of like the boss is falling from godhood. And what you're left with is that somber theme, but it's just going to be the violin. So let's check it out. It's like, oh, we made it, but what humanity have we lost on the way? That's the vibe. It's so cool. And then it ends exactly how it started. Now you're the god, right? Ding! Goes down to the tonic, has the choir, and it hits the bell. And now it's like you've gone to the spot. It also really makes this song great to repeat because it shows kind of the cyclical nature of the Dark Souls series where it's like a being will rise up and then the being will fall down, another being will rise up and another being will fall down, right? It's this this sense of like there's a cyclical quality to this that's really incredible because it shows that the bookends are powerful godly beings, but what happens between is this like really convoluted gray transfer of power, right? It's like intense and dramatic. Way to go, Yuka. You can tell that what's really fascinating about this is like, let me try and collect my thoughts on this. So I think in Armor Core 5, she has some, like, it's a good composition, but it doesn't like explore a lot of new ideas, which again isn't necessarily bad, but it doesn't make it like, I'm not going to think immediately back to that song as like being crazy unique. Whereas over time, you can see that this darkness and the way that she's conveying this power, it's kind of, it hasn't completely molded her style, but you can tell that it like has had an effect on it, which is cool. It's kind of cool. All right, we have one song left, and that's going to be Sekiro, One-Armed Wolf. Let's see here. Now, this is one, if I remember correctly, this is going to have a lot of that tense violin, but let's check it out. Pen dropped in the room, right? Like we were talking about earlier. And using world instruments. So it's like using an instrument that conveys a certain scene, right? So we talked about rhythm earlier. We talked about like tones and intervals and all that stuff, like how notes relate to each other can give you a sense. We talked about how loud they are can give you a certain sense of like place. Here, we're getting a shakuhachi, which is a Japanese flute. So the moment that they use that shakuhachi, we're getting a sense of place. We're getting the sense that this is in old Japan. And there's that like very somber minor playing cello that's playing, right? It's staying on notes for longer. So it's like half notes with quarter notes kind of sparsed in there. It's playing with different measures, but they're staying on those for very like evocative, like it gives a sense of like a wave. And also like if something is like kind of moaning or crying, that subconsciously gives something a I think it gives it a sense of I don't know, it taps into that like sad part of us, or like the kind of reflective tragic part. And so that's the sense I get with this. You hear the taiko in the background, which is like the militant Japanese drum. So now it's opening up with these violins, so it's very beautiful, but it's also tragic, right? It's kind of a common theme between these. There's Regality with the minor 7th and major 2nd we were talking about. Also makes it kind of like vaguely heroic and majestic. All right, now what we have here is called an ostinato. It's like a repeated, I think that's the right use of this, but it's like a repeated violin section typically. And what's happening is that ostinato, that cello, just like we talked about earlier, the strings give the sense of humanity. So the cello is Sekiro. It's the one-armed wolf, right? Well, it's kind of lamenting and moaning, but now the ostinato shows that it's moving. So, right? It's a sense of movement. Now, because that's repeating to give a sense of movement, you can kind of think like, okay, well, that has some emotion, but because it's repeating over and over again, if we want it to repeat, we can't introduce new emotional ideas to that little unit if we want it to repeat and show movement, right? So it like the moment you start adding different stuff, it's not really repeating in the same way, right? So what Yuka's doing here to give this more emotion and to show that as this character's moving, that they're going through like a kind of emotional thing. Let's listen. You hear that there's a viola or there's some kind of string instrument that's changing the root note. And what that does is, just like I said before, I can play certain notes, but depending on the interval, it'll sound different. So like if I have this as my root, completely different, right? So if I play, that's the same. That's going to be our ostinato, right? Right? The first one is super clear, open, bright, and the last one is like, it sounds just like very tense and dissonant. It's like, ooh, something's off here, right? Same thing's happening here, except she's using that root note to make it more emotional, because the interval she's using is, I think it's playing, it might be on the minor third. It's not really important, but the main thing is just that you kind of hear how she's using that bass note to color the ostinato, right? Little shakuhachi thrown in there for sense of place. Also adds to that sense of like mystic reality. Opening up and seeing a stage once again, right? Feels very grand with the right? Yeah. Well, that's it. That is Yuka Kitamura. So hopefully, as we were playing along with this, you guys got to see some of the changes that she's made over time. She started off being a bit more like by the book, kind of cinema, like, honestly, you could also say this might be the director as well, because if she was asked to make a certain song, like in a cinematograph, like, wait, how would you say that? Cinematographical? I have no clue what the right word for that is. Like in a cinema context, if she was asked to do that, maybe that's what she was asked to do. But I think it's really fascinating to see, as time goes on, messing with that sense of like letting a couple sounds bounce around in thick reverb, and then introducing, whether it be like an ostinato string part to convey humanity, or adding in choirs to be godhood, or like a world instrument in order to make, like, give something a sense of place, changing root notes. Those are all things that are like really give a lot of her music a they have a very dramatic sense of like struggle. That's really cool. So without further ado, that's gonna be the end of this stream. But if you guys like this, I stream every Sunday. So next Sunday we'll be streaming at 12 o'clock. Probably on Tuesday or Wednesday, I will update on what the content of that stream is going to be. But it'll be 12 next Sunday. I think it might be us playing a game, but we'll kind of play it by ear. Just enjoy doing this kind of music thing every once in a while. Enjoyable. But yeah, if you guys want to see more of this kind of stuff, just let me know. You can find the VOD of this at, I was going to say twitch.tv, at YouTube Serene Night. So it's Serene Night VODs. So VODS, right? Actually, I think I might have changed that. Let's see here. I think I might have switched that to, I think it's Serene Night Streams. At the very least, you can check out Serene Night. So that's SEREKNIGHT on YouTube, and I stream there. Stream on Facebook as well. Update on Twitter at Serene Night, spelled the same way. Yeah, so if you guys want to check it out, then love to have you guys come by. Appreciate you coming and chilling today, and hope you have an awesome